Namaskar and welcome to Candid Conversation. We've been having an above normal monsoon. There's excessive precipitation, and as a result we are seeing traffic snarls in some of our major cities, but those are not because really of traffic congestion to a large extent, because roads are getting waterlogged, and people are raising the question as to whether this is because of bad planning or because of bad management. And to understand this issue in its context and put it into context, we have with us in the studio Professor Chetan Vaidya, Director of the School of Planning and Architecture and a well-known city planner. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And first of all, let's try and understand why are we having this waterlogged roads? Is it because the stormwater drains are getting blocked because they're choked or they're incapacitated? I mean, they don't have the capacity to deal with the kind of deluge we are having right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mark and Doordarshan, for inviting me for this.
Yeah.
As you said earlier, Gurgaon has become Gurujam,
Okay.
and rains have brought pains to the cities. Now, as you rightly said, the first issue is we have blocked or not conserved our natural drains. That
Okay.
is the starting point of our problems. Either they are filled up or obstructed and damaged, the natural draining system of the cities, particularly Delhi and Gurgaon.
Right.
Then the drainage system is not integrated with overall city development plan. Eventually it should become a service. When we build cities, we don't realize, unless the roads, water supply, sanitation, sewerage, drainage should also become an integrated part of the development process, which we have missed out. And third thing, wherever they are clogged with solid waste. And
why does this happen? Why are they clogged with solid waste? Because that is a problem. But the other thing you did mention is whether these stormwater drains itself have the capacity. One would argue that the rain patterns have not changed that much. They are a little bit this way or that way. So we've been seeing these rains for ages, and a city can expect this much rain in a year. So shouldn't we be prepared, sir?
Yes and no, I would put it this way. We should have done our drainage system little for the larger rains to be expected.
Yeah.
But there is also increase that the more and more construction we are doing, our runoff is increasing, as they call it in the technical language, coefficient of flow. And the system of pre-development and post-development, the velocity of water is increased drastically. And so that is another issue. When we planned, we did not realize that the water flow is going to be so high. So it's a combination of factors. And one starting point will be also getting the drains desilted and obstruction removed. Okay,
so that would be the starting point, the short-term measure. Right. Is there another way? I mean, let's say the runoff is high and the velocity is high because, let's say, there is no seepage that is taking place. Is it better that we should have, more seepage, or there's too much concrete around the place? In today's world, that we can utilize, some sort of porous asphalt or something like that, which can actually let the water go through, seep.
We need to. The starting point first is each building or each building complex should have a rainwater harvesting system, which takes care of at least part of the issues. It slows down the process. The second would be we have all this, our footpaths and all this should not be hard surfaces. They should be able to absorb water. That would be the second suggestion. And step by step we have to approach this problem.
So you're saying now, the water that comes, it has to come out onto the streets. They're coming actually from the rooftops, etc. They're not only because of the roads being concrete. True. It is because the rainwater is not being harvested in buildings.
Within buildings.
Within buildings. So everything is just finding its way onto the streets, and there's no runoff.
First step would be at the building level. Second will be at the building complex level. And then we come down to the streets. That would be the level. And one typical example which has been referred by so many is the example of comparing Noida with Gurgaon. Noida is one place where development authorities, government public agencies provided infrastructure, roads, and then invited the private sector. Whereas in Gurgaon, the whole development was handed over to the private sector, and they have just provided road. There is no drainage, there is no footpath. That is one of the planning issues which we need to take care of.
Right. So now we are living in an age where urbanization is taking place rapidly, and our cities are already huge. Let's say if we talk Mumbai, Delhi, they are, I mean, among the largest cities in the world, populations which are larger than countries. In cities like this, is it possible, I mean, that the city has reached its limits? I mean, it can't, the infrastructure can't actually deal with anything more. Or let's say the sewage system for one. Is it enough? I mean, that has to be one of the major areas where we have to look at, because what is happening in the rains is that even the sewages are getting clogged and they're getting, you know, they're coming out into the open.
No, I still don't believe that our cities can be, you can limit the population. That's
no,
not,
obviously you can't.
You cannot limit the population.
Yes.
But our governance has to change. Governance has to change. We should have more decentralized governance, and our planning also has to be decent. Rather than bringing all the sewage and the drainage water, rainwater and the solid waste at central places, we should think of how we could decentralize that process. And that would be one approach. In particular, in case of solid waste, which is creating a problem for drainage, we need to segregate our solid waste both at the household level, markets, shopping complexes, hotels, etc., wherever they are being produced, and then see to it that we get less and less, or reduce the solid waste in the streets. That would be one step. Similarly, drainage and sewerage also could be decentralized at different places.
So this is a job that, I mean, even the general citizen has to do. I mean, you have to take it, make a lifestyle change in a sense. I mean, I have to segregate my waste in such a way that it can be recycled or whatever, so that you know, at the end of the day, all this is adding up to the problem.
In Indian system, we have to start training our maid servants and servants in the house that they need to segregate. And how do we train and incentivize these people? That would be very important step.
And us ourselves as well. Yes.
Yeah, as well as that's the starting point. But eventually, most of our people, we have servants in the house. And how do they keep? Sometimes you see they segregate at the household level, but by the time it reaches the transfer station, it is got mixed together. And this whole idea of not in my backyard, I think that is a very good thing. Nobody should have their solid waste and these issues in their backyard. They need to come in our front of our yards or in the front of the building. That would be the starting point.
Our stormwater drainage system is separate from the sewage system, right?
Yes.
And it has to be like that. Otherwise, but is it, you know, I mean, areas where they are two merging in some places, because that could be quite dangerous, because obviously the population continues to increase and the pressure on the sewage system will continue to be higher. But the stormwater system can be fixed to some extent because the rains are predictable.
True. Yes, we can fix our stormwater systems, and they should not be combined together. If that is happening, it's not correct, it's illegal. I would put it. But I think major problem is, I take you back to Hindi movies. When you see the rains comes in the rural areas, people start dancing on the streets. They are so happy because that is the lively. Unfortunately, when rains happen in urban areas now, we don't want our children to go to the schools or to the streets, and people have to be warned and all that. So we will have to create a situation where water is not a threat, but it becomes an element of urban design and planning. We include it as part of urban planning and urban design. We welcome water. That is important for us. And that is one area where we'll have to think of new approach to urban planning and design.
Well, how is this done in some of the major cities? Let's say, like I was reading up in New York, they build storage vaults, you know, in the stormwater system, and that at least temporarily, and they probably have various kinds of heavy weather, including snow. So if it's possible, I mean, their cities are also pretty large and taken a lot of effort, you know, both from rains as well as from population. Are there models we can follow?
There are a number of models from different places. But I think most important thing, if you ask me what we need to do, and I have looked at some of the smaller and medium-sized towns and cities in USA very closely, what they're telling, the starting point for urban design or urban planning in those cities is looking very closely of geography of that area. They realize, they find out and identify which are low-level areas, which is the natural drainage system, and they plan accordingly. They don't work against the natural drainage system. And I think that should be starting point. If I have to teach urban planning to a new planner,
Okay.
I need to teach him regional geography as important as land use plan or architecture.
So we have failed in doing that here in our country. Let's say, take Bangalore, for instance. I suppose in many of these areas, it's a city of ponds, and now there are buildings where those ponds used to exist. But then obviously, because the population has increased, the water is also being utilized much faster. So it probably doesn't even reach the ponds. But when it heavily rains, it has to go towards those areas.
Definitely, we have not given importance to the natural drainage system, ponds. They were linked to each other.
Right.
And this again gets linked to our idea that people like me, who are more conscious about market-based urban planning,
Yes.
you started using land as a resource.
Sure.
And that is one issue where we need to rethink. I think we'll have to rethink of the way we pay or we recover our cost of infrastructure. And that will need to be a different kind of model rather than the model which we are using now.
So for this to be effective, sir, would some sort of administrative changes be required? Let's say water systems come under environment rather than under municipal or something like that. Because let's say if buildings are being built where a river bed used to be at one point of time, this is a serious flaw, isn't it? And it has happened.
Yeah, true. Then you're getting into much bigger question of
this is all leading to the problem of water on streets.
Yeah, but who should govern our cities?
Yes.
Should it be governed by our elected municipal councillors, or should it be governed by different state level officials? And there I still believe, and I'm still convinced, that 74th constitutional amendment, which gave power to the local bodies, we identify them as third level of government, needs to be further strengthened rather than taking away their powers. So how could we improve their strength, their capacities, and their technical knowledge would be an important step in this direction.
We're talking to Professor Chetan Vaidya here on Candid Conversation. We're going to take a short break. We are discussing the issue of waterlogging in streets. We're putting it into a larger context. Do stay with us.
इन दिनों अपडेटेड रेज्यूमे रखना बेहद जरूरी है। यस माइन प्रफुल्ल कुमार, मेजर प्रफुल्ल कुमार, पैरा स्पेशल फोर्सेस, 3 साल हॉस्टाइल जोन में टफ था। JNK में स्पेशल सर्विस, कुछ नए दोस्त बनाए, कॉम्बैट फ्री फॉल स्पेशलिस्ट, बलिदान के लिए तैयार। जैसा आप देख सकते हैं, आई वेयर माई हार्ट ऑन माई स्लीव एंड माई रेज्यूमे ऑन माई यूनिफॉर्म। विच अदर कंपनी लेट्स यू डू दैट?
हम हैं भारत के सबसे एक्साइटिंग वर्कप्लेस और हम दे रहे हैं आपको एक ऑफर। भारतीय सेना, आम नहीं ये जिंदगी।
जन्म से लेकर 5 साल तक की उम्र के बच्चों को 7 बार टीकाकरण के लिए लेकर जाना है। 7 बार में से एक भी छूटना नहीं चाहिए। ये जिम्मेदारी हम सबकी है। ये जो बीच के टीके भूल जाते हैं ना, ये देखिए अच्छी बात नहीं है। सारे टीके समय से लगेंगे, तभी जानलेवा बीमारियों से बच्चों को सुरक्षा मिलेगी। 5 साल 7 बार छूटे ना टीका एक भी बार।
उत्तर प्रदेश के करोड़ों लोगों के चेहरे पर मुस्कान लाने की जिम्मेदारी जिन कंधों पर है, वो कंधे हैं अखिलेश जी के, जिनके प्रयास से सबको साथ लेकर हर समाज, हर वर्ग, हर तबके के लिए योजनाओं की शुरुआत हुई है। 1090 विमेन पावर लाइन, एक ऐसी योजना जिसने यूपी की मां, बहनों और बेटियों की सुरक्षा की जिम्मेदारी ली। महिलाओं के लिए विमेन सेफ्टी ऐप भी बनाया गया है। इस योजना के तहत प्रदेश की सारी महिलाएं अपने आप को सुरक्षित महसूस करती हैं।
देखिए, बच्चा बीमार भी हो तो भी उसे टीके के लिए हर बार ले जाइए। अगर किसी वजह से दूसरी जगह भी जाना पड़े तो भी इसका ये जो कार्ड है, इस कार्ड को साथ ले जाए और टीके जरूर लगवाएं। 5 साल 7 बार छूटे ना टीका एक भी बार।
Welcome back. You're watching Candid Conversation. We have with us in the studio Professor Chetan Vaidya, Director of the School of Planning and Architecture and a well-known city planner. Well, we've dealt to some extent with the problem of water logging on streets, but you know, one of the issues that it causes is traffic congestion. Now, if we, you know, can better traffic management sort this out? Because that's one of the big issues, isn't it? Traffic is a huge problem in our cities already, and it's creating pollution. And you know, when water logging of the streets takes place, then the traffic is just we had a 25-kilometer long traffic jam. I mean, this is unheard of.
I think yes, we will need to focus on traffic. And when I say we need to focus on traffic, we need to link our land use planning with public transport. I think focus has to shift on public transport. We have started very well on focusing on metro, PRTS, though Delhi has not done well so much, and the bus transport. So we have a good public transport system, maybe rail-based transport system, and then good last-minute connectivity to the system. Last mile connectivity, both is required. If you just focus on a good metro but don't link up the way it has happened in Delhi, don't link up with last minute connectivity, that again is going to create a problem. Second would be, by design we need to discourage private cars. By design. High parking cost, incentives for car sharing and car pooling. I think that both has to come together. We need to manage transport demand. And one of the methods could be, rather than increasing supply of roads in the cities, flexible work schedule could be one of the issues. Which
so why are you against increasing the supply of roads? Isn't it because you know, I mean, one believes that the economy is also running on you know, the manufacturing sector, which is producing these cars, and they are being sold. There's a demand, they're creating a lot of jobs. People are moving, things are happening. I mean, it's a sign of prestige, of upward mobility, all these sort of things.
Our Minister of Urban Development, when he has to go to airport, he takes the metro. And we all have to now realize that it's prestigious to use metro and a cycle. I think we have to change that mindset. Cars shouldn't be only used on weekends. I mean, and that's the ultimate.
Ultimately,
that is what we need
cost,
to do.
The public good is so much higher if we start looking at these issues. Fair enough, sir. We'll also that brings in the issue of pollution as well. Now we live in a city which is heavily polluted at most times, but during the rains at least the pollution comes down. But then we have the other hazards that are caused because of the rains. Now, in a situation like this, I mean, dealing with pollution also obviously comes under city planning, isn't it? How do we reduce pollution, not only of the air, but of the water bodies?
Just in case of the way we talked about how do we clean air in our cities, and one of the focus has been banning this old cars and even the system of odd and even. In principle, I think is quite positive. But the more focus has to be public transport. That is a whole series of activities. And second would be, how do we keep our water clean? And there are a number of activities where we would have to manage our solid waste in a much more integrated and at the household level. I think that would be a very important step in this area.
There are health hazards also that come into play. I mean, we are living in at a time in the monsoons, especially when vector-borne diseases rise, and when there is a lot of water logging that takes place. Obviously, the chances of these infections increase. That also is part of the ambit of city planning, isn't it?
Actually, when the urban planning, which is called town planning, started in UK, it started because of public health hazards. It did not start because of management. For urban management. It started because of public health. We decided what should be the size of room, there should be windows, there should be cross ventilation, there should be space for human beings, and so on. Unfortunately, over a period of time, we forgot public health as an important outcome of appropriate town planning, and we are focusing on these physical parameters. I think we will somehow have to link public health with urban planning, and that is one whole area where we talk of different issues, different indicators which needs to be developed and implemented.
So the problem looks quite enormous. I mean, when we see it on television and when we experience it, if somebody was stuck in those traffic jams, do we have the capacity to deal with these problems right now? I mean, are they too big to handle, you know, or we have to take a long-term measure, obviously, but in the short term as well, in terms of the bodies that are at work to deal with this issue?
I think we'll have to divide this whole issue into two parts. One is the short-term measures and winnable measures. We'll have to give that impression that our civic bodies can deal with it rather than blaming them for all this problem.
Okay.
And I was very happy to see the statement by Gurgaon Commissioner today that within 9 to 10 months they are going to develop an action plan, which is very positive. And we need to give that strength to our local leaders, both the mayors and the municipal commissioners. That is one short-term measure. As far as capacity of urban planning as an overall is concerned, not just on developing a drainage system, we are inadequate urban planners. We don't have adequate urban...
We don't have trained planners.
We don't have adequate trained planners at all levels. At the Nirman Bhavan, where the government of a Ministry of Urban Development there, state secretaries, as well as local bodies.
I see.
But unfortunately, in the private sector also, there are not enough urban planners. When you say that you appoint a consultant, but he may not have that experience which we need, that kind of vision and that kind of knowledge.
But isn't it, shouldn't an architect, I mean, you're in the School of Planning and Architecture, shouldn't an architect also, while designing a building, put it in the context of the city and also be a city planner in that sense?
We are making architects more and more conscious of these issues. This whole idea of buildings which are more efficient, both in terms of energy use and infrastructure, is part of this. I mean, that efficiency of buildings and complexes and its context of cities is being made. We are making them conscious about these issues. But still, it's not enough.
Let's say, how would, you mentioned the smaller cities in the US and how they are dealing with this. But let's take some of, let's say, Beijing, for instance. How would they be dealing with this issue? They don't seem to be having the problem. They may have the problem of pollution, but they don't seem to be having the problem of waterlogging.
I think that city doesn't have the problem of waterlogging. But many other cities, Chinese cities, have this problem.
I see.
And I don't
So it's not unique only to
India.
I mean, because they have the same size of cities as what I'm talking about. Now, you did mention earlier, sir, that we should look at water as a resource and as, you know, I mean, it's a gift and we really need the water. I mean, half the time we're talking about droughts and we're talking, is it possible when we do get this water, you know, rainwater harvesting in houses is okay to some extent, but, you know, on a much larger scale, can this water be harvested in some way?
Yes, it can be done. So what the point is, once we have done that basic rainwater harvesting within the building and building complexes, now we should start looking at a ward level or at a block level. How? And one of the simple solutions which I have discussed with some of the experts who say that our gardens and open spaces can be used as temporarily holding ponds for this water. That will improve our underground water situation and also not bring water immediately on the streets. That could be one approach. And then that needs to be linked up with overall integrated drainage system.
Should it become mandatory, sir, that we use porous material now on our streets where water can seep in? Because also there has been a problem with groundwater recharge. I mean, if the water is not seeping into the ground, there is no groundwater. So how does one actually, deal with this issue? Because it's all collecting, and it's ultimately a lot of it is just evaporating.
Yes, I agree with you. We need to make our footpaths and all that where seepage could be easily. Different kind of muddy, hard material should not be allowed for those things.
So even on the sides of the streets, of the roads, when all this it should be mandatory.
It should be mandatory, legally mandatory for this.
And should it also be mandatory that all buildings, whatever they are now, I mean, whenever they were built, should now develop rainwater harvesting systems?
Not only that should be mandatory, there should be incentives for those things. Maybe incentive on 5% or 10% reduction in property tax could be one starting point.
And designing a building itself, when we're talking about buildings of today which are called energy efficient buildings, in terms of water storage, I mean, we don't see buildings which have these sloping roofs anymore. Isn't it better when that sloping roof, the water flows down much easily and is easier to collect? Or is that, I mean, I'm just asking from a layman's point of view.
No, for high-rise building, sloping roof itself is not a solution.
Feasible, yes.
But you will have to see that how that water could be brought on the ground floor or you reuse within the building complex.
Okay.
That could be of the options possible. Can we just hold them within the building complex under some ponds or something like that, and reuse them, part of it at least. And then it again comes down to much bigger question: what is the cost of water?
Is there a problem of land as well, sir? Land, because I mean, the New York system is that they build these storage walls underground, so it ultimately is not affecting the land on the surface. Can we do something like that?
We can do it, but even though building those underground tanks has a cost element.
Obviously, obviously.
And how do you get
that kind of finance?
Finance and get it paid for. I mean, that would be an issue, which will add to the overall cost. So I still don't know the numbers.
So what about this? Would the state be involved in it in a sense that, you know, let's take our roads, for instance, they are that long and they're causing traffic jams, but let's say at every 20 or let's say every certain distance, maybe about 100 meters, 200 meters, you have one of these walls. Is that possible?
Yes, that should be possible.
It should be possible.
It should be possible.
It should be possible.
Yeah.
So in future, I mean, what do you look at the outlook like now? We have had this problem. There was a wake-up call when Chennai had it last year. This time we have 3 cities, and it was not even excessive rain in Gurgaon. You know, I mean, it was, okay, Bangalore may be seeing some excessive rain. Mumbai is seeing, always sees rain heavily. Delhi is also seeing some little more rain than normal. Are we prepared for, what's say, climate change?
We whole urban planning process in India has to be changed.
Okay.
And I said earlier, our planning has to start with understanding the regional geography, and second would be the public transport system. I think the more public transport system we create, that would be the second point to deal with this. Third would be linking public transport with land use planning.
Okay.
When I studied urban planning 30, 40 years ago, my teachers who taught me land use planning never met the teacher who taught me public transport. That is the truth. But that has to change now. We need to link public transport with land use planning. We need to go for mixed land use. Traditionally, we always had mixed land use, where we don't have to keep residents and offices and other places separate.
And climate change?
And climate change, we have to now consciously accept that things are going to change in the near future. There could be more rains and there could be more intensity of rain.
We're already seeing that, sir.
Then that we are already seeing the example. We'll have to be prepared for that into it. And we'll also go for higher density and higher floor space index.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Professor Chetan Vaidya, for helping us understand how to deal with this issue of water logging on our streets and traffic jams as well. Thank you for being with us here on DD News. Well, that's it then. That was Professor Chetan Vaidya helping us to, demystify this whole problem of waterlogging on our streets. And a lot of the problem is to deal with us ourselves and a change in our own mindset and our lifestyles. If we can be better clear in our minds as to how to deal with the waste management, that will go a long way. Also with conserving water and rainwater harvesting within our own households, things can be reduced to a great extent. Thank you very much for watching. Namaskar.